One wrong move, and everyone would destroy him. A single warrior stood alone against 800 enemy soldiers with nothing but a spear in his hand. The men around him looked at him and thought he was crazy. His enemies laughed and mocked him, but as Jashobeam was swinging his spear, the men looked closely at his face and realized he was a complete monster. How did one simple man beat an entire army with only a spear? To understand this, we must go back to the beginning of Jashobeam's story. Israel was in a dangerous time. King Saul was losing control of the kingdom, and he was searching everywhere for David, trying to kill him before he could become the next king. David had no throne, no army, and no safe place to stay. He spent his days hiding in caves and moving from one place to another. Jashobeam arrived at one of these caves late one evening, carrying his own weapons and nothing else. He stepped into the firelight where David's small band of followers sat resting. Jashobeam said only that he had come to fight, and he sat down among them without another word. From the moment he arrived, everyone could see he was different from the rest. He carried a spear that few other men could even lift, let alone use in battle. He trained every day, even in the caves, practicing his strikes against the rock walls. A runner came into camp, breathing hard.
They're coming! From the hills! An army! How many? Too many! We must go!
The soldiers with David began to gather their weapons at once, checking their positions, watching the distant hills for the first sign of movement. Jashobeam stood among them, quiet, watching the same hills. "We'll make our stand here," one of the older soldiers said, pointing to a narrow path the enemy would have to cross to reach David's camp. The men nodded and quickly took their positions among the rocks. Jashobeam stood near the front, closer to the path than almost anyone else. The enemy charged straight toward David's camp, confident they would crush the small force defending it. David's men fought back with everything they had, but they were badly outnumbered. Around Jashobeam, most soldiers began falling back toward the rocks as more and more enemies poured into the fight. Jashobeam did not retreat. A man next to Jashobeam watched in complete fear and prepared to run away. But he saw that Jashobeam wasn't planning on retreating. The man screamed,
Jashobeam, we must retreat! Don't be a fool, it's suicide!
But Jashobeam didn't care, and the man ran away from everything. Jashobeam planted his feet and raised his spear, and as the first wave of enemy soldiers reached him, he began to fight. He struck one man down, then turned and struck another, moving constantly, refusing to let any single enemy get behind him. The men around him who had been falling back paused for a moment, some of them turning to see what was happening, seeing one man standing firm while the rest of the line bent backward around him. More enemy soldiers pushed toward him, drawn by the sight of a single warrior refusing to break. Some of them began shouting to one another as they closed in, calling out that surely one man alone could not hold against so many for long, that if they simply kept coming, he would tire and fall like any other soldier eventually would. Jashobeam met each one as they came, his spear moving fast, striking low and then high, never staying still long enough for an enemy blade to find him. The fighting pressed in tighter around him as more soldiers arrived, forming almost a half circle. Jashobeam never looked behind him. He trusted David's men were still holding the line somewhere behind him, so he kept all his attention on the enemies in front of him. The enemy kept coming. Wave after wave pressed toward the spot where Jashobeam stood. Some of the enemy soldiers, seeing so many of their own men fall in that one place, began shouting to each other, trying to organize a stronger push against him. Jashobeam's arms grew heavy as the fighting stretched on, but he did not slow his pace. Sweat ran down his face, and his breathing came harder. With every passing exchange, he fought without pausing to rest, without stepping back even once to catch his breath. After a while, Jashobeam really started to feel the exhaustion. Enemies came at him multiple times again, but it all made him more tired. Jashobeam started doubting whether he could truly beat them or not. But warriors like Jashobeam are not made in one battle. They are built through years nobody sees. Every morning before the sun came up, his father would take him outside their home with a wooden spear in his hand. Jashobeam swung the spear, but his father knocked it away easily. He tried again and again, but every time, the spear fell from his hands.
Jashobeam, strength is not in never falling. It is in rising every time you do. Take the spear. Learn from this.
Years passed, and Jashobeam refused to stop training. While other boys rested, he stayed outside until the sky grew dark, repeating the same movements hundreds of times. But every morning, he came back. One day, a group of older warriors saw him training and laughed. They told him that swinging a spear against the air did not make someone a fighter. One of them stepped forward to challenge him, expecting an easy victory. But this time was different. The warrior attacked first, but Jashobeam stepped aside and knocked the weapon from his hands. His father watched from a distance, knowing the weak boy he once trained was gone. But Jashobeam had no idea that every moment of training was preparing him for a day when he would not face one warrior, but hundreds.
Before we continue, these videos takes hours and hours to make. If you could, please like and subscribe and comment which country you are watching this from.
At one point, 3 enemy soldiers came at him together, spreading out to attack from different angles at the same time. He finished the first soldier a moment later, and the second turned to run rather than face him alone, disappearing back into the larger mass of enemy soldiers still approaching from the ridge. Behind him, some of David's other soldiers began to notice that the ground where Jashobeam stood had not moved, even as the fighting around it spread and shifted in every direction. A few of them started making their way back toward that spot. They fought their way closer, cutting down enemy soldiers as they went, calling out to each other to regroup near where Jashobeam still stood. Though, even then, it was Jashobeam himself who kept cutting down the largest share of the enemies pressing forward. The fighting continued for a long stretch of the day, enemy soldiers falling one after another around him, the ground beneath his feet growing crowded with the bodies of those who had tried and failed to bring him down. Some of the attacking soldiers, seeing what had happened to so many who came before them, began to hesitate before stepping forward, glancing at each other as though hoping someone else would be the one to try next. Jashobeam did not wait for them to decide. He pressed forward himself when the moment allowed it, striking down anyone still within reach. As the hours wore on, the enemy's confidence began to break apart entirely. A commander among the enemy soldiers, watching from a distance, shouted orders trying to organize another push, but fewer and fewer of his men were willing to move forward when he gave the command. Jashobeam kept fighting, even as the numbers in front of him thinned, cutting down the last few soldiers bold enough to still come at him directly. By the time the fighting finally ended, the enemy force that had come down the ridge with such confidence had been broken completely. 800 of them lay dead on the ground, and every single one of them had fallen to Jashobeam's spear alone. Word of what had happened spread through David's camp before Jashobeam had even made his way back. David heard the account from a soldier, and he called for Jashobeam to be brought before him at once. When Jashobeam stood in front of David, still carrying the marks of the battle on his arms and his armor, the men around them were already talking quietly among themselves about what rank a warrior like this deserved among David's growing band of fighters. There was no question in anyone's mind, and no one argued against it. From that day forward, Jashobeam was named Chief of the Three, placed above every other warrior in David's army, brought more battles, more narrow escapes, more nights spent hiding from Saul's soldiers in the hills and wilderness of the land. Through all of it, Jashobeam remained close to David. But while he continued fighting beside David, a much larger war was happening elsewhere. The Philistines gathered their armies and marched against Israel, forcing Saul to lead his soldiers into battle. But the fight quickly turned against him. The Israelite army was overwhelmed. Saul's sons were struck down, Jashobeam watched David finally sit on the throne of Israel. But becoming king did not mean David's battles were over. The enemies around Israel were still waiting, and the small group of warriors who protected David in the caves now had to protect an entire kingdom. David began building a real army, and he needed men he could trust to lead it. He needed strong and loyal men, and among all of them, Jashobeam stood first. David placed him over the 1st Division of Israel's army, giving him command over 24,000 soldiers. Every month, different divisions of soldiers were responsible for protecting the kingdom, and Jashobeam commanded the first group called to serve.
Remember, some of the tiny stories in this video isn't biblically accurate, they are made for cinematic reasons. But the story itself is almost fully accurate. Do you want to learn how to make these videos? Go to my YouTube page and watch the member-only video. I provide all the prompts I use, tools I use, and how I animate.